ecosystems in addressing the challenges faced by urban communities and enhancing sustainable development. And then we also have Ras Kwame, who's coming to talk to us today, who just gave a masterclass 2 days ago in Guildford. And Raz will be talking about staying in the game, a career in reflection. After that, we have our Creative Industries Futures panel, and then we'll be closing the day with a final piece from David McGrain, myself, and Amo Talwar. Brilliant.
Yeah, this is very much a topic that's very dear to my heart, as this journey really did start at ACM. Well, can't say the word, but the investigation started at ACM after finishing. Well, I'll go to the next slide. So yeah, I finished my bachelor's at ACM in 2021, and my goal was actually to get a job after I finished ACM, to find out that the job that I want does not exist in the city. Decided to go investigate this problem a bit further, which brought me to do a master's. And then, yeah, the problems that we had in the city, it was clear to me that we need more access to opportunities and we need more access to resources. This is Mars Malone, which some in the room might know and some might not. Mars Malone is currently in prison, and earlier this year he released his second fully length project, and it peaked at number 66 on the UK albums charts. Why is this important? The United Nations has set out 17 sustainable development goals, goals that, in essence, address issues that we all face as societies and as communities, and even as music professionals and musicians. And going back to the previous slide, as you can see, we have SDG 1, 8, 9, and 10. Now, what are SDG 1, 8, 9, and 10? No poverty, decent work and education and economic growth, industry, innovation, infrastructure, and reduced inequality. Now, one can say that Mars Malone, his particular circumstance of him being able to put out an album from prison and chart with that album, is certainly achieving some of the SGD, or moving towards, let's say that, towards the SDG goals. Music interaction, as we all know, is quite different, or has gotten quite different over the past 15 years. And with the changes in music, we can all say that the industry has definitely become more democratized, allowing young musicians and professionals to learn a lot more about the industry, but also gain access to the industry a bit easier. Now, what are the questions that I plan to address in this presentation? The impact of the budget cuts within our city of Birmingham, which some of you might be aware of. How to be innovative and coping with these financial challenges, the relationship between urban communities and local governance, and the role of music and music ecosystem in achieving the UNESCO Sustainable Development Goals. My methods is taken from my own personal journey throughout the music industry, but also taking information and data from various sources, from UK Music, government, BOP Consulting, Live Music Mapping Project, which is a consortium that I'm a part of, Arts Council, and obviously the Centre of Music Ecosystems, which I'll be highlighting something from them in a little bit. What does a music ecosystem look like? Well, here we have an image from Sound Diplomacy and Centre of Music Ecosystems of what a functional ecosystem should look like. Personally, and this is a disclaimer, not any of the organizations I work with, I believe that our industry in Birmingham, we're only able to do two of these things quite successfully. we have a good live music industry, and we have a good amount of music recording spaces across the city. Birmingham, what does our music industry look like? Roughly, we have about 2,000 music jobs. If you include the rest of the West Midlands, we have about 6,800. Live music venues across B postcodes, we have about 230, and we contribute 270 million to the UK GDP each year. It's also important to note that we have one of the youngest populations under 25 across Europe. I thought it'd be quite interesting to highlight that post-World War II Birmingham looked quite different. We had the second largest job creation city outside of London between 1951 and 61. And household incomes we saw was 13% above the national level. This was a problem for national governments, and they considered our growth in Birmingham quite threatening. Threatening the other local regions such as Scotland and Wales. Sorry. Now, why is music particularly important within our city of Birmingham, or even other cities for that matter? Because it's through the process of like engaging with music that you recognize the coming together of the community and the engagement with each other in that community, and who all acknowledge that each play a contributing part in achieving the goals of that community. Here is a photo by Vanley Burke, who's one of my favorite photographers. In the case of Birmingham, there always seems to be a decision of whether our local authorities should focus on developing heritage or nurturing heritage. In this case, we can see that it's very much about let me go back a minute. In Birmingham, our policymakers very much made the decision about whether they should support heritage or support nurturing culture. And I don't think that necessarily has to be the case, because without one, you can't have the other. In the case of Birmingham, what we find is that the nurturing of the music ecosystem of the city is largely done by grassroots organizations, where we'll find on the left here is a live music research project, which is, like I said, the organization I'm a part of, which basically focuses on the research, the development and sustainable of music venues across the city using the live music map, which is presented to policymakers to give a visual representation of live music in the city. We also have on the right an image of the Crown, which was a building that's recently been listed as a Grade 2 building. That work was largely done by Birmingham Music Archive, which is a organization that focuses on developing the heritage, preserving the heritage, of the city of Birmingham, the cultural heritage. Now, looking at education, it's widely recognized that education has a positive effects on pupils' outcomes, but as we can see that participants in schools in music is now down by 25%, and also 45% fall in A-level uptake in schools. Now, as a society, we do recognize the importance of music within schools, but there's definitely a huge, somewhat contradiction here, that we do recognize the importance in schools, and there's been efforts to highlight this, but we do still see these figures falling. And the question is, are our current systems and music programs in schools, is it sustainable? Now, on the other hand, we do see a lot of equality or a push for equality across the music industry. We have organizations like Key Change, which focuses on providing live music opportunities. We have Girl Grind, which is actually a Birmingham-based organization, which focuses on training and development for young female musicians. We have Women in Music, which is actually developed by a ACM student, which I thought was quite important to highlight. And then we also have another organization from Liverpool called Genie, which focuses on developing more data to accurately portray women in music industry. Birmingham has actually made an attempt to address our cultural issues before. Those issues focus on themes such as the culture that's on our doorstep, how can we preserve culture for the next generation, recognizing that we are a creative city and what is our cultural capital, and lastly, culture for the future, recognizing what we do now as a culture and how we can develop that culture for the future. And here are some of the other challenges that we have within our city. The access to professional networks, which I highlighted earlier, because that finding came from my master's research. The lack of data representing the value and output of music within Birmingham, the access to resources, COVID-19, which is obviously having a lasting effect, because once we came out of COVID-19, what we saw is that venues then had to deal with the rising costs of running their venues. Late night public transport, which is a unique problem to Birmingham. As I said earlier, we do have one of the youngest populations across Europe, and having one of the youngest populations across Europe, it poses a challenge when these young people are not able to find ways to get home after a late show or anything like that. Then we have the cultural fragmentation of the city, where there's a huge disconnect between the funders of culture and the underground, more contemporary music scenes within the city. There seems to be a bit of a disconnect there right now. And then lastly, Birmingham, the cuts to the cultural budget, which should be going up to about 100% next year. So it will be interesting to see how organizations cope with these cuts. And these are just some of the implications of the cuts. Obviously, a loss of culture and heritage, certainly a loss of jobs, loss of talent within the city, damage to infrastructure and pipeline, which are quite fragile as they stand already, and quite importantly, the loss of opportunity to build social cohesion among communities, as Birmingham is one of the most diverse cities across the country. And here are some of the recommendations. As you can see, each one of the recommendations does still tie into the SDG goals and play a part in reaching those goals. So bringing more collaboration among contemporary music organizations and funders who support these creatives. More data to portray and articulate the social and economic contributions of music within the region. There should certainly be a shift on changing the cultural perspectives of Birmingham. I think a lot of times when you speak to people about Birmingham, they say that they don't know what we do. They don't know what we're about, and also our accent, which I don't think can be changed much. But yeah, so I think the cultural perspective of Birmingham needs to be addressed, and I think it's one of the more standout problems that we have. Improvement on education and training. As highlighted before, the participants and the engagement in music within schools is falling at quite an alarming rate, at 45%, which is, it makes one wonder, if we recognize the value of music in schools, why is it so high? Collaboration amongst businesses to create more corporate and social responsible strategies and objectives to support or enhance the local music ecosystem of Birmingham. Further development and community engagement to get a clearer understanding of what the cultural needs are of the city. And lastly, future developments to contribute to sustainable development or enhancement of culture. And in saying development, I'm referring to if we think about Birmingham's 2040 plan, I'm not sure how much people in the room are aware of that. Birmingham has some big ambitions over the next few years to transform the city and build more infrastructure. And I think there definitely needs to be more thought into how culture fits within this program and these developments. And thank you. Any questions?
Much, Owayne. Any questions for Owayne? Yes.
Thank you, Tom. Fantastic insights there, really interesting. How do you think the well-publicised financial problems Birmingham Council have had recently are going to impact the future in the 2040 plan?
Sorry, can you repeat just?
So the well-publicised problems Birmingham City Council have had financially recently, how do you feel that's going to impact the Birmingham 2040 plan that you just mentioned?
Well, absolutely. It's like I said, I think there needs to be more thought put into how it's going to be impacted, because at the moment I don't think it's necessarily been understood. But like I said, there will definitely be somewhat of a cap of how much can be achieved, because there is no cultural budget. And if there's no cultural budget and there's no strategy that's been highlighted in terms of how we're going to do it, then it's still a question of, it's a bit up in the air right now, I feel personally. There's been no announcement from our local government of how we're going to achieve it. There's been a lot of information put out that it's happened, but how is it going to be managed, and how resilience is going to be shown is still very much unclear. But my opinion is that there definitely needs to be more collaboration among private organizations within the city. There definitely needs to be more, culture needs to be on their agenda, basically.
Any more questions for Owayne? Yes. There you are.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. It was really good. In terms of the government and the work that they're doing, how do we know where all of the funding goes and what is their priorities are? So we have a new mayor now of Birmingham. What are his plans? How can we be seen to be feeding that in so that those thoughts are in his mind, or in the minds of those people that are going to make those differences? Are our voices not being heard, so that that cultural budget is found, and so that there can be more work? I know there's many questions there.
Yeah, it's all right. I think that's a really good question. I kind of touched on it a little bit throughout the presentation, where there's not much research and engagement that's been done with the local community here to get a clear understanding of what the cultural needs are within the city. Going back to, we had the Legacy Games a couple of years ago, and throughout the Legacy Games there were events and cultural things happening, but there's been no evaluation to maybe get a clearer understanding of how those things affected or contributed exactly to our cultural economy. In terms of the new government that's of Birmingham, there hasn't really necessarily been anything that's been put out or highlighted yet about how culture will be navigated going forward with the new government. But there is work that's being done with current leaders from Birmingham City Council in developing a Birmingham Music Charter, and things like that, which the city actually doesn't have. So, I mean, that's an important first step, I guess, in addressing some of these challenges.
Brilliant. Thanks, Owayne. If I can invite Raz up to get set up. Raz, how do you want to do this? Do you want to do it like sit-down thing?
I'm happy to stand.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
Sure. Just fire some questions away
No problem.
if you'd like. Hi, everyone. My name is Ras Kwame. I'm here to talk about staying in the game, which I think can actually be still in the game, if you like, as well. So I made a few notes, which I'll just share with you right now. So I'm kind of new to the academic space. So I approach this with presumptions of how I saw the academic world from my last academic experience, which professionally was probably in the 90s. So in the late 90s, I graduate with a BA honors degree as an economics major, and then I get into the music industry, and then academia is not even a thing to me. So I've been around and doing this for the last 30 years or so, and I didn't really approach this with the intention of being around for 30 years. It kind of like happened organically. And to be honest with you, at the very beginning, it wasn't even a career pathway, if you like. So I'm of Ghanaian descent, so I have African parentage, and traditional African parents did not even consider music to be a thing you did other than enjoy yourself personally, and it was a community spirit thing. So it was only till I joined the BBC with BBC One Extra that my parents actually recognized and thought I was doing something quite serious. So I've gone from my initial practice of DJing, which is something I fell in love with in my secondary school years in Ghana, West Africa. I was born in the UK, and at the age of 10 years old, my parents relocated to Ghana as a family, and I ended up growing up there and spending all my secondary education there. And that's where I fell in love with music in the first place. Discovering music or the creative industries as something that has academic or even economic value has been a great discovery to me. Now, you know, you can have research on hip hop culture and its contribution to the US economy. You can talk about other things such as the academic value of music beyond just being a DJ who falls in love with playing records and so on and so forth. Over the 30 years, coming into the music industry organically, i.e. just falling in love with music and finding pathways I could make a living out of it, I've had to I have worn quite a few hats. So I began as a DJ. In the late 90s, I opened a record store in West London, taking advantage of the boom in dance music of the time and the arrival of 12-inch records in the market. From that, I developed a passion to actually make music myself and have my own record selling in my record shop. So I take on the hat of a music producer. Semi-successful, I like to think. Had some chart activity with a UK garage act I formed with my business partner of the time. That was called M-Dubs, and we had a couple of minor hit records. That takes on the capacity of being an A&R person. Through being successful in the music, I end up with BBC One Extra, and then I take on the capacity as a radio broadcaster, new skill. Great place to be, the BBC, lots of opportunities. So I move into TV, presenting, event production and management, not because I was interested in learning about events, just because I just wanted to have parties where I could be the star DJ and therefore invite all my friends. Voiceover acting, you're on the radio, you have a market niche. Products and brands are interested in exploiting your voice and your connection to that niche, so therefore you begin to work in voiceover. And lots of other in-betweeny bits. As I say, coming into the business, you sort of like, or coming into the business from the black music perspective, you sort of like have this tradition of adding things on to what you do, to your skill set as you go along, and you don't actually take the time out to realize that you're actually applying some sort of skill. if that makes sense. You kind of like just do what you're doing. These are things that I've literally only just thought about in the last 2 years or so, engaging with my academic journey. So that begins with myself being in the music industry and reaching my twilight years, if you like. You know, I've stayed quite cool with youth culture all along the way, but I am wary of the thought of, you know, what do I want to do next, or where do I want to go with it? And through conversations with colleagues like Michael Riley and Kienda Hoji, and guys who I know in academia, I meet Denise Stanley from Clock. She's right here. And she speaks to me about converting my lived professional experience into an academic space. So this makes me engage with something called reflective discussion, which is looking back at what you do and actually stopping to take in the skills you have learned and acquired, which actually means something beyond me thinking, I need to have a rave, I need a flyer, well, let's just get some design together. That actually is a thing. It's a part of your skill set. And I've had a couple of years of really thinking about all the things I've done in little boxes and turning them or finding their pathway within an academic space, which has been a great journey so far. So I'm currently doing a PhD in creative industries, trying to figure out, like, what do you do next? As a person from black music, there aren't many practitioners who have actually taken the base of what they've done, i.e. a career in music, and expanded upon that into their twilight years that I can see. So there aren't many examples of me for me to follow, which would be much easier to do. I'm having to kind of like figure out for myself how this kind of works, with a view to sharing with others, with a view to creating a pathway that we can all follow, but primarily to find other things that I can do within the industry that without actually leaving the industry. Because we have a culture in black music where it's kind of like hot or not. So you get into something, you're DJ, you're the hot DJ for a few years, and then you're not the hot DJ anymore, and then you disappear, and then someone else becomes the hot DJ. Which I think is cool if that's what you'd want to be, but in conversation with people who are no longer the hot DJ, their ambition was not to leave the music industry and go do something else. Their ambition was to stay in the business, but there was no pathway for them to follow. And that's been a great voyage of discovery for myself as well. I can share with you some of the things that I've discovered along the way. So key to me still being in the game after 30 years, I guess my existence is based on passion and love for what I do. I really like listening to music. I really like discovering new music first. I really like playing music and being the guy with the microphone that decides what everyone else is listening to. And I'd probably be into music 70% as much as I am today, even if I didn't work within music. So the passion for it has definitely kept me around. I like to think I'm an ambitious person. So whatever I decide to engage with, I always want to try and rise to the top of it. And the music industry is a great place to nurture your ambitions, i.e. most of the time it's not working. So your ambition is to make it work. And that's how I've kind of like stayed in the game. I always have a willingness to learn. I'm open to learning things coming from a base of learning about music and different genres and different styles of music and having to embrace them. So learning has always been a big thing, and I have that willingness. I like to think I've remained young at heart. I can relate to the youth and the youth culture and what they think and what the latest slang is and how they dress and what inspires them. I've kind of like remained young at heart with that. And that couples with the fact that in the business, I like to think I've aged gracefully, in that, how can I say this? The price of aging is wisdom. As you age, you get more clever, and you know more stuff, and you have more confidence in yourself. And I kind of like know more now, so I can do better at what I was doing, based on that wisdom. And underneath all of that are my core principle values instilled in me by my parents: honesty, integrity, dedication, commitment, creativity, empathy and tolerance, being truthful to people you're working with, people around you, telling people you don't like their music, telling them why. That's underpinned things. And my key skill for being around this long is probably my capacity to reinvent. Again, something I've only discovered in the last couple of years. And not just reinvent myself as with my skill sets, which I was talking about earlier, but even within the skill sets. So I got into the industry as a black music DJ on BBC One Extra who played strictly UK black music. Today, I am a dancehall and reggae and Afrobeat specialist DJ on commercial radio, Capital Extra. So there's a lot of reinvention that has to take place, and you've got to consistently challenge yourself to become something fresh and new, which I'm finding I've got to do more of with the advent of a younger generation that has a smaller attention span for things. So there's been plenty of that going on. And I guess the underlying thing that's kept me here, that I found consistent from one end to another, is the fact that at the beginning I discovered music is a joyful thing. When it hits, you feel no pain, to quote Bob Marley, my favorite artist. And because I've invested in so much in making people feel good from the practices that I've engaged with, that I was talking about earlier, I've kind of like become addicted to it. Yeah. So I continuously want to make people feel good. So in summary, I'm doing a doctorate to become Dr. Feelgood, if you like.
That's fantastic.
And that's kind of like where I'm at with it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Raz. That's a lovely way to end it. Thank you.
Good.
I've got a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions, but I know that you're going to be with us for the panel as well, so I'm going to try and keep them a little bit more about you, and particularly I'd like to dig in to your practice and your transition to academia, effectively. How have you found that with engaging with academia, has that affected your practice? Has it affected what you do on a day-to-day with as a DJ, as a creative professional? Has it changed the direction for you?
As Denise pointed out to me at the beginning of the journey, she was like, hey, this is going to change you because it's going to make you think more and see things differently, which it definitely has. I'll be honest and say that a large capacity of embracing that change or even noting that change is due to the fact that I am trying to engage with academia. In terms of my actual day-to-day practice, not so much, but I can say that I'm kind of like more aware of what I'm doing now, and I'm aware of the impact, and I'm aware of the value that it can bring to what I am studying. I don't even have a dissertation subject in particular yet, so everything's feeding into where I intend to go with it, if you like. So yeah, I'm adjusting in that way.
Perfect. I think it's something that we all struggle with as creative practitioners when we come to academia, and trying to balance that side with the creative side and trying to put them together and not have them compete.
Yeah.
I think to have one side. One of the things we struggle with quite a lot as an institution is bringing students on to level 4 programs where they come in, they want to create, they want to do, to be present in the creative space, but they don't necessarily want to engage in what we'd consider traditional academia.
Right.
How important do you think that is, having kind of now been through that journey yourself and previously with your economics degree?
I think it's going to be very hard to tell old me or younger me that, listen, this has some kind of academic connotation to it. Yeah. Because in my time of coming into this, there was none of these institutes that exist now existed. Yeah. I think there's probably one creative relative course via Westminster University back in the day that everyone did. Yeah. If you wanted to get into radio and broadcasting, there was short courses where they teach you how to splice tape, etc., etc. But I'm a true believer of the fact that in order to engage with the creative industries, it's got to come from within, I do believe that there's got to be some creative spark in you that ignites the fire, and then comes academia on top of that in order to broaden your knowledge. So I do understand people getting into these sectors and thinking, oh my God, what's this got to do with anything anyway? And there is some truth in that.
Yep.
But especially in a modern world, if you like, I think the value and the marriage of the academia with the creative is becoming more and more important, more and more recognized as well.
Absolutely.
As there are more practitioners coming into academia from, say, the 1960s and 70s right through.
Yes.
And as more people come into it, there are more people for us to look at, and therefore define that pathway
More
as
people
well.
seeing more validity in it because there are more
And
examples.
academia is clearly recognizing this stuff a lot more
That's it.
in these times.
I've got one more question before I hand over to the audience. Just in respect to what you talked about in terms of the need to kind of continually reinvent yourself, roles changing, wearing many hats. What do you think, in relation to that, is the biggest challenge for young creative people now going into the creative industries?
The biggest challenge for the young person, I don't think they have any challenges, if I'm being honest. You can be this week and that next week. You can be viral with a moment on TikTok in this genre of music and be a signed artist that's suddenly doing something else. So I think there's a beauty in that, in you can keep it moving very quickly now. I think they've come into a world where reinventing yourself from week to week is a thing. It wasn't so much a thing in my day coming into the business. I think there's a lot more of that now. So people have this more fluid capacity. And to be honest with you, I think as a young person, the first 10 years of whatever you're doing, you're free to discover and chop and change and learn and switch as much as you want till you decide what you want to do. I'm friends with doctors, accountants, lawyers who still want to rap, who have kids who now send me their demos. And they're still talking to me about their glory moment in the 90s and how they'd like to build on that and drop an album, which is kind of wild. But that fire never seems to leave you. And if a doctor can see himself reinventing into an artist while still being a doctor, then why not for everyone else?
That's brilliant. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for us? Cornelia.
Hiya. I wanted to touch on what you'd said about going into an industry that your parents didn't necessarily support. And we're doing research on that on a lot of our students who are still facing that at this moment. And noticing the range of stress that they experience in trying to succeed whilst at university with that in the back of their mind. As someone who's now you've come through it and you're working in academia, have you got any thoughts on how we as institutions could support those types of students who are carrying that weight of perhaps being told that this isn't something they should be getting a degree in?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because it is very cultural. Maybe I'm one of those modern type of African parents where I do not see the barrier at all. I'm quite happy for my children to do whatever they'd like to do within the creative industry space. But I think in terms of academia making it easier for those people who do face that challenge, I guess it's more on academia to amplify itself and its presence to make the parents who are not with it, if you like, understand the value of this academia. At the moment, a parent will look at Stormzy in the national charts, being of Ghanaian descent, and say, well, okay, he's doing all right. I don't mind you rapping so much. But if a 20-year-old or a 19-year-old was to say to their parent, I want to go to university to learn to rap, that might not make much sense. So it's for whoever has the rap course to make it visible to the parents and make them understand that this is actually a thing. Because it is a very novel thing, it's a very new thing. Music, academia and music, because we haven't had a million academics #1 in the national charts. It's always going to look a little bit like, well, is there any academic value to this? You've either got it or you haven't got it. You can either sing or you have that level of talent or not. Nurturing people into these spaces is still very new, very nouveau, and especially in the black community. It's still, let's congregate on the corner, let's find the best rappers in the crew, they're gonna be the rappers, I've got a car, I'm gonna be the tour manager, he's good with computers, he's gonna be the manager, and so on and so forth. It's a lot more organic like that. But I do believe academia has a great thing to play in that process. It just needs to be brought more to the front. And I also think it's also a matter of time. Time changes everything. Yeah.
Brilliant. Any more questions for Ras?
I just wanted to touch on your point about moving into academia and not really having anyone that you can see and kind of follow and having that experience. I was just wondering what you think how it may have impacted you differently to have someone like you said, to have someone like you who's been before you and taken this new route into academia and having that kind of representation, what that would have been like for you.
Oh, that would have been amazing. If I could see 10 of me and just, like I could see 10 DJs and think, wow, that looks hot. How did they do that? It would have been amazing. But the culture has not evolved beyond you're amazing at what you do and you best stay amazing at that because there isn't much else to do. So again, it comes back to the institutions shining that light amongst the practitioners to let them know that, hey, you might think you're 35, you finished rapping now, there's plenty more for you to do because it's about the experience and the knowledge being handed down that makes everything easier for everyone else who's coming up. So I think it's really important for us, the older practitioners, to have something to fall back on that demonstrates an example for the others coming up. Do you know what I mean? So even the diversity of what we do comes in earlier. So you're not still trying to be an artist when it's clear that you're kind of like past it. You just automatically branch out into these other spaces. And it's a challenge. I think there needs to be more finance for it. I think the government has a great role to play. I think looking at things like the value of the contribution of black music, black culture, black entertainment to the national economy, the GDP or whatever, needs to be revealed very quickly so we can begin to understand and put some merits to what we actually do as the practitioners and, just make more of a thing of it. Do you know what I mean? At the moment, it feels very like we just do what we do and we're quite happy with that. But in reality, as more practitioners come into the business since the 60s, it's becoming more and more obvious that, we need some better structure to this, both in terms of academia, infrastructure, economics, etc. We could just do with more of a helping hand, given our contribution. It's not just asking for stuff. Our contribution is massive. That's a lot more clear now in these social media driven times. And we don't have much of a basis for that other than kids looking at other kids on social media. Well, we need some value to that and there needs to be some economic driver towards it, I think.
It's fantastic. Thanks. Round of applause for Ras, please.
Thank you.
Final set of refreshments will be served outside, and then we'll have the Creative Industries featured panel to finish with today. Thanks, guys.
Registration opens, gather round. The future of creative fields profound. Martin Dallon's voice sets the tone in spaces where creativity is known. At the ACM